Good evening, workshoppers. So another Wednesday, it's another episode. Well we've been coming off kind of a Diablo high. It's that time of the season again where we start to have things mellow out. People, go and finding different games to play. They're finding other things to, go through and take their time while we wait for the next season or the PTR, any other type of news coming for the anything in Diablo. And so that brings us here to episode 195, the mid-season lulls, or lulls, whichever one that you wanted to go through and take it on. But yeah, since the last episode, haven't had too much going through coming on. We got the Band-Aid off of my nose here, so that's definitely nice. It doesn't, obviously, it's a skin cancer, so it's not, healing over quite that well, and it still will bleed occasionally from time to time, but at least it's not the disgusting, dark patch that is just oozing blood the entire time that I had to hide for the last episode. But, I've gone through, seen another doctor about it, have surgery scheduled for the end of September to go through and get that taken care of. But, otherwise, I sadly have not really touched Diablo all that much since the last episode, as I've kind of gotten re-addicted to Heroes of the Storm. It just chanced a couple of games with a friend, and now I've been playing it a lot lately. I will at least say that I do keep it pure, and I only play Diablo Heroes, and at least so that way I have that little bit of connection there, with the game, even if I'm cheating on it for a little bit. Also been spending some more time reading and painting, some of my Warhammer models and such. Trying to, it's a big one now since everyone's been kind of on lockdown for months, that people have been going through and continually showing their, this is the army that I painted, or this is the new army that I started, during the COVID lockdown. I'm just staring at all my gray plastic models, and it's like, I should do something about that. I should paint that. And so I got just like a couple of like little quick paint schemes that I'm going through working on, and I just kind of, whenever I get bored of one, when I'm painting my 40k army, I get bored of that, I go and paint my Age of Sigmar army, and when I get bored of that, I'll force myself to go back to the sci-fi. And just 30 minutes to an hour every night before bed, kind of calm me down, chill out, get mellow, so that way it's it's time for rest and such. And yeah, besides that, I've been going through and reading. As I mentioned in the last episode, I've been pushing my way through the Sin War Trilogy, and I really do mean like pushing my way, because it is the book 3 isn't as bad in terms of the writing as the first two books are. It definitely seems as if the editorial process took more than a casual glance at it, so there's nowhere near as many like editorial issues with the novel. But God, the characters, they're just so insufferable, especially the main character, Odyssean, where I'm now halfway through book 3, and he is just the worst, the absolute worst. That it's like the juxtaposition that the character's in right now is he's got a small army, he's leading them to the capital of Kijan. And, he's like, it would look bad, if I walk up to the city walls of an army, marching behind me. So I'm going to go by myself and try and smooth things over, with the mage clans and the trade guilds, the true leaders of the city, the people that have power, in this region, to say that we're not a threat and that we have to join our forces, because I've already gotten rid of the Triune, but I'm going to need help if we're going to go up against the Cathedral of Light and the Prophet, who's actually an Arius. And so he's looking to try and form a treaty with them, and at even the slightest of insults, like not even insult, perceived insult, his first inclination is just pure rage, and I'm gonna kill all of them. I'm just gonna kill everybody. His only way of dealing with problems is to like burn them or destroy them or remove them from existence. There's no diplomacy or talking things through. It's just pure and utter violence, which I guess is kind of this a very Diablo solution, and this was, kind of written as a precursor to Diablo 3 to kind of set the stage for the story that they would be telling in Diablo 3 and setting up those elements. So it even makes more sense in that aspect, given, Diablo 3 is just all about how quickly can I kill everything. And, well, yeah, little did, Knack know when he was writing this novel that his characters would definitely fully embody that, with just, we'll solve all of our problems with violence. Even when I'm trying to not solve my problem with violence, I just spent half a page going through and having an inner monologue to myself that I really have to try and make this work. I have to get them on my side. And then the next page is, so you're not all that, you're not all that much to talk about, Odyssean. I'm gonna burn this motherfucker. And it's just like, really? But at least it's almost over. The project's almost done. I'm almost through the books, and then I won't have to read them again for a very, very long time, hopefully. But we'll see on that one. But it is refreshing going through and reading through the novels, re-immersing myself in the lore and some of the aspects that I'd forgotten about. And a lot of it, has come down to, just the continued misconceptions and rumors and stuff like that that's going into Diablo 4. People keep wanting to call, the Pale Cultist Rathma. And, I've got, about 150 pages left in the entire Sin War Trilogy. And yeah, he still has all his fingers. He's not missing a finger, and, it never actually describes his eyes as being all black. It actually generally takes a lot of care to continually mention his hair not being bald, and then the other, like, probably the biggest kind of like marquee trait of the Rathma in the novels is his cloak. How it constantly talks about his robe, his cloak that he wears, and how it's always like flapping in the breeze even though there is no breeze. And it always seems to kind of mimic his emotions, or it's almost kind of like his cloak is an emotional response, since he doesn't really show anything, through his facial features. And it also just is re-cementing the character of that we can't risk, heaven or hell taking a foothold, in our world. We can't do anything, to allow them to come into the world, and so it's really, really interesting that people are thinking that he would be the one that's going and trying to resummon in Lilith, and I really of course hope not. The official name of the character is Magnus, and I hope that Magnus is just an entirely new character that has been developed for Diablo lore. But moving on from there, we've got a little bit of at least news for Diablo 3. There was a Banwave recently, to kind of go through, cut down on the botters in Season 21. And while this is a regular thing now that they've gone and done Banwaves in the last couple of seasons, one of the complaints that the players have levied against Blizzard is that they take too long. And that you're going through, and if you're really wanting to go and like push those top 10s on leaderboards, or especially for some people that want to push like top 10s on multiple classes, it's very discouraging and kind of self-defeating when you see you're 2 months into the season and you see these people that are going through and obviously botting and nothing's being done about it, and you kind of give up. You've got a couple more weeks to go through and push. The PTR is coming up, and then you just it's like you kind of like you mentally defeat yourself, that it's like, why, I'll never be able to compete with these people, why should I even try? And then Blizzard goes through and drops a Banwave with only a few weeks left in the season, where now all of a sudden it's like, if you had taken all of that time and really dedicated yourself to it for that last month of the season, you might have been able to have done better on the leaderboards. Even for some of those people that would take like those top spots, they feel they might have been able to have done better with just an extra week or two of whether it have been fishing or just one more extra week of Paragon grinding or something along those lines, to get an even better clear time. if they hadn't felt that it just wasn't going to be worth it with all those bots. And so the complaint was that Blizzard, we appreciate the Banwave, but can you do it sooner in the season so that way we're not left waiting, where, it's ticking down to midnight, and are you going to ban these people or not? Am I wasting my time trying to compete with the botters? And this time it was definitely a lot earlier, only halfway through the season, and you've got this massive Banwave, which is really defeating. Where obviously there's still plenty of time for the botters to go through, create a new account, set their bots up, back up and such, but now they're playing from behind. And against people that are like really motivated and continuing to grind out for the season, they have a real shot at going through and doing it. Some botters might face a similar scenario. Well, I'll just give up now at this point, where it's not going to be worth my time to go through and get everything set back up. I'll wait till season 22. It creates a little bit more of an even playing field. My hope is that there still is a end of season ban wave just to hit the botters again. It's like we went through, we got you all, halfway through the season, so that way the people that are playing legitimately aren't, are feeling that Blizzard has got their backs. And then anyone that has the audacity to go through and try and do the whole botting thing again, we'll go through and we'll smack you down a second time later on in the season. And if Blizzard at least kind of does a bit more of that, it might help to contribute to lessening the bot numbers. Never going to solve the botting problem. There's no way around it. I know a lot of other content creators and streamers and personalities and say, it's like we need to solve the botting issue, but that's just not how computing works. As long botting for a lot of people, especially the ones that create the botting programs, it's a challenge. It's a problem that needs to be solved, and so they're always willing to dedicate time to solving it or fixing it or beating that challenge. They're not necessarily the ones that are profiting from the bots themselves. They might not even play the game. They're just doing it to see, can I do it? Can I get by Warden? Can I actually make a bot program that can play the game efficiently or something like that? And they're always going to be those people, and you're never going to be able to get rid of them. And they're always the one with the advantage because they know what they have to beat. Blizzard doesn't know what their anti-cheating software has to beat until it's been implemented, and then it's already in the wild and it's a little bit too late. Blizzard will forever be playing catch-up. You can always institute, there have been some times, like for a very long time, there was, I should say for not a very long time, but there was like a good 6-month period where the botting problem had kind of been solved for Diablo 2. And they had closed up some holes that allowed like bot programs to interface with the chat without actually being in the in-game client. So that way that's where you'd get all like the gold advertisements and things of that nature in the game. They weren't even having like valid accounts. They were able to interface directly with the chat programs. And they were also able to stop a lot of the big bots that were running a lot of the leveling grinds and such. And it made it kind of a pure experience for almost an entire ladder season on D2. But then they finally, worked around whatever fix it was that Blizzard had made. And then it's if you were to hop onto D2 now, it's the same D2 that you would remember with the bots and gold cell spam and all other types of stuff. So it's forever, it's like a forever problem. It's always going to be there, but we can always hope that Blizzard at least makes a concentrated effort to try and squash it as much as they can, or at least in the aspect of like Diablo 3, taking any praise away from those that do resort to botting, removing them from the leaderboard and nixing any hopes that they have of getting their name kind of like immortalized at the end of a season, and which I think is something that at least is a livable compromise. So there will be those botters, and yeah, that does suck. But if at least they're maintaining a ban wave kind of schedule that will keep the leaderboards pure for those that are legitimately putting in the effort, that we can have a better overall experience and unfortunately kind of like learn to live with it. And this is something that's going to affect Diablo 4 as well. To have don't have any type of unrealistic expectations. There will be botting in Diablo 4 without a doubt. It's just the nature of the online games nowadays. I mean, hell, like look at Fall Guys. Like, you know, the most competitive non-competitive game that's out there right now, and people are, you know, botting and cheating in it because you know, who knows, you know, people do things for people reasons, whatever. But yeah, tomorrow, you know, this episode is being recorded on Wednesday the 26th. Tomorrow is the 27th, my birthday. And it's also the start of Gamescom over in Germany. And that is Gamescom with a lowercase g. It's definitely something that I guess once I found out that it specifically is stylized as all lowercase, I noticed when certain publications will capitalize it, and other ones don't. You know, it's just, did they not get the memo or something like that, or just, you know, seeing it in different online spaces as people go and talk about, you know, Gamescom, or even they'll go through and they'll capitalize the C, you know, like what Blizzard does with BlizzCon. So if that's how Blizzard stylizes it, then everyone else has to stylize it the same way, right? But Blizzard at least has announced that they're going to be like going and showcasing the new kind of animated series, the Afterlife series is kind of like lead up to Shadowlands at Gamescom. I'm sure there's going to be some, you know, talk about Shadowlands and things of that from kind of like the virtual presentations that they're going to be doing. I'm conflicted in whether I think that they're going to be showing anything from Diablo at Gamescom. I almost feel as if they were going to make any type of presentations out of it, that they would have announced it at this point. And they haven't. There are a few blank spaces in the schedule, like the program, but I don't really see them taking up any massive amounts of time for Diablo 4, especially given that the main marketing push that they're making for Diablo 4 is the quarterly development blogs, which, you know, we're getting towards the end of quarter 3. There hasn't really been any news or murmurs about it, but I imagine it's probably going to be much akin to last quarter's, and that we'll probably see it within the last couple of weeks of September, the last couple of weeks of you know, quarter 3, especially given that they are wanting to begin to start tackling the big questions of itemization and skills. And since this is going through so many iterations and things are changing a lot on the development team, I expect that they're probably wanting to take as much time with this one as they can to maybe flesh out any ideas that they have a little bit more. And I'm definitely looking forward to that one. I'm sure that this is probably one of the biggest ones that the community has been asking for in a while, is to get more of that look at what itemization or skill systems or in-game content is, because that's where we're going to be spending the majority of our time with the game, especially if it's going to be like this living, ever-evolving, open online world that they can continue to add on more and more content. Like if you look at the map of Sanctuary that they're including with Diablo 4 over on the Western continent or Eastern continent, you know, since the majority of like the Diablo games have been featured only on the Western continent, this is the one that we're going to be spending the most time, you know, over in the lands of Chaldeum, or the area formerly known as Kuros, Gosglen, the Dry Steppes, Fractured Peaks, Halazar, you know, the home of the necromancers and such. We're really only looking about like 40% of the landmass of Sanctuary, if even that. Not to mention Heaven and Hell, the Pandemonium, or one of the other like little strange tidbits from the Sin War Trilogy, other worlds. You know, there are other, you know, worlds and places that are out there that the angels and demons have been creating since the beginning of time using the World Stone, but all of them have kind of been failed experiments. But could we potentially go and see them? Well, part of me would love to go through and see it. The other part of me, no, because as soon as we start going through and like planet hopping and such, it feels a little bit too high fantasy for what I kind of envision. You know, the core Diablo experiences, and you start when you're traveling to other worlds and places like that, it begins to pull a little bit away from that horror aspect. Traveling to hell, yeah, No, that's cool. That's fine. That goes through and that keeps it within the horror element. You know, traveling to heaven, especially if it's run by a group of homicidal angels that are looking to wipe out humanity. You know, doesn't it's not the heaven that you might have been expecting. It's another one that could still fit within the element. And then you have Pandemonium, this kind of neutral battleground that has had, you know, millions or billions or trillions of years of death upon it, is another, you know, that fits kind of the grim dark element quite well. Going much more beyond that, it just feels a little bit too wowish to me. But you know, there's definitely a lot more, you know, to explore, and so when we go through and think about Diablo 4, we're not really thinking, no one's thinking about like the leveling experience. You know, obviously that's something that we'll be going through and doing, and with kind of confirmed seasons, it's something that we'll be doing a lot. It's something that we want to enjoy. We want that leveling experience to have some meaning or value, and not being a you know, an hour and 5 minute grind at the beginning of every season. That it might add a little bit more depth to gameplay. Obviously, I am going to enjoy going and digging into the story, getting into the world and such for every little tiny quest that's out there. But we're going to be spending most of our time at the end game, and itemization is a big part of that, as it is with any ARPG. As is, of course, the one kind of in-game activity that we've been shown with the dungeon keys, with being able to up the level of dungeons and add specific affixes to them, where it sounds a bit more like the mapping system in PoE than the mythic dungeon system in World of Warcraft. But you know, we'll have to wait and see just how much detail they're going to go into with this next quarterly dev blog. I did really like the size, the meat that we got in the Q2 dev blog, and I hope that it's in general about the same size as that. So we'll go and see what we have here. You know, we could be lucky by the time that we start recording the next episode, we can have it, though I think it's probably going to be a couple episodes before we go and we get to that point. And to kind of circle back to Gamescom, and I see them mostly talking about Hearthstone and World of Warcraft on this one. I don't see anything Diablo related. Maybe they might spend a little bit of time talking about Diablo 4 as kind of like a preface or precursor to the dev blog, and I definitely don't see them really discussing anything about Immortal at Gamescom. I would love to be wrong, you know. So there is that. This is definitely one of those occasions where, you know, hashtag 9ballswrong. I would love for that aspect to go and come up. But going through and, you know, getting, I guess, a little bit more into some of the fluff, there was a very interesting article that went through, or Reddit thread that popped up on Reddit, oddly enough, that I wanted to go and bring some attention to. This was over on the main Diablo Reddit thread, and this was from Lutsock, who's actually, you know, was the former producer on the Diablo 3 team, Nathan Lutsock, you know, for which Lutsocks are named after. And he went and talked about a lot of the things within the game, in the development throughout the original D3 and into Reaper of Souls. You should go through, check it out. It is absolutely amazing. I will provide a link here in chat, and a link, you know, over on YouTube as well. You know, so, and unfortunately, if you're listening to this one on iTunes or Stitcher, it should be relatively easy to find. You know, just do a search for the user Lutsocks on Reddit, and you'll be able to find his post history. But one of my favorite like kind of like little discussions that he had on there was going and talking about the Druid. And, you know, it's the Druid is a very talked about class. People were super excited to hear that the Druid would be coming back for Diablo 4, and it's also one of the ones that people have been asking about for Diablo Immortal. And, you know, people are still actually asking, hey, you know, we would love to go and pay you guys some money if you wanted to add another class to Diablo 3, which is definitely, you know, telling at least just still how popular Diablo 3 remains to be. But it is going and discussing to some detail some interesting aspects of not just the class design of the druid, but just how all the classes were designed in Diablo 3. And was also going and talking about how the druid is very popular, or at least was very popular on the development team back at the time. They actually had one of the original artists from Diablo 2, Anthony Rivero, who was the senior concept artist that created the druid for Diablo 2 that was on the team, and that they had put a lot of effort into it. But there was a lot of kind of design problems, not technical problems, but design problems that they had with bringing the class into the game. Part of it came down to like visual themes, and it was something that they wanted to put like some elemental things in the wizard, such as fire, and they were also beginning to scrape out a niche for the barbarian with having kind of like some earth elemental abilities and such. And so if you're going through and you're taking like, fire, earth, and even like electricity for like shock pulse and stuff like that from the wizard, that there's not a lot left for the druid in terms of what they could like really showcase or funnel into the class for the elemental themes, which was a huge part of the identity in Diablo 2. And then one of the other parts of that identity was, of course, pets. And they, at the time, were thinking, well, if we're going to make a pet class, we might as well go through and, like, take more of, like, the necromancer concept over the druid. Now, obviously, the necro didn't make it into the base D3 or even Reaper of Souls. There was another one of those ones when they were having these early discussions that it was kind of another knock against the druid, and it ultimately was one of the things that they had where they've already have a lot of work done on the barbarian, the witch doctor, the wizard. They know that they have to make a range class, like an archer type class, out of one of the last remaining slots. And if they really wanted to go through and pigeonhole that fifth slot as the druid, it means limiting a lot of the design options that they had for the other classes. And they felt that, well, if we scrap the idea of having a druid, then we actually have a lot more that we can do. We can like go super hard onto that earth theme with the barbarian and give them like volcanic leap, and we can go and give like the twister to the wizard. We can double down on pets with the witch doctor, and then also we can have some more like nature themed abilities for the monk. And so it opened up a lot more design space to remove the druid than it was to try and make it fit within that. And then when it came down to the creation of the Crusader, that one was pretty predetermined. That they had the Barbarian was kind of like their big offensive archetype, but they still were lacking like a tank archetype, or that warrior in plate that is so core to a lot of fantasy elements. And so the Crusader itself was already kind of predetermined to fill like one of the last remaining niches that they had within the class motif of Diablo 3. And so that was kind of like the walking through like all the decisions that kind of led them to being, well, we just really don't have room for the druid. And I felt that was actually really cool, going through and learning more about how that they come to those places when they're talking about design or making these design decisions, and that they're really looking to keep things varied and to have their own individual identity. Which is also one of the things that led to like them scrapping like rune words and such, because they didn't want enigma or cross-class skills and things of that nature coming over from Diablo 2. But it was, it's a good like look into the minds of the developers and the problems that they go through when they're trying to kind of carve out like these core pillars of when you're early in development. And that's things that the Diablo 4 team, which is largely the same team that is being discussed here, with the problems that they're going through, the questions that they're asking themselves. We still don't know what the last two classes are, for Diablo 4. And based on some of the comments that they have, a ranged character is probably a pretty high up there, as well as, having maybe some sort of pet class, or we haven't really seen what, the druid, might fully have to offer. We got to look at their talent trees, at Diablo 4, but those were very early. just because that's the way that they were doesn't mean that they wouldn't fit in a whole bunch of like pet talents and such later on. But it kind of feels as if at least those last two classes that they have, where we're going to have a ranged and we're going to have a pet class. Maybe they'll do both in one, and kind of throw an oddball out. But the sky's the limit in terms of the future. In an ARPG, if they do the end game in a different way from what they did with Diablo 3, with the whole infinitely scaling, and so minuscule differences in the power between classes can be multiplied to obscene levels. If we don't have that infinitely scaling in game, the actual power levels between them might not matter as much. And then as the game goes and continues on, if you go and you do something where like a new class every year or every 2 years, or something along those lines, you'll have overlap. But I think people will be fine with that, even if there is some overlap. If you give them just enough to have a little bit of their own identity, just imagine having a Crusader and a Paladin, in the same game. They come from different backgrounds or different people. The Crusader, stayed true to the teachings of the Zakarum, and were trying to purge the Zakarum of darkness, whereas the Paladins saw the darkness in Zakarum and turned their backs on them, that will practice faith in our own way and went across the sea, to go through and hole up in Westmarch, where they can claim independence from the church. So the lore there is, very different for those characters, and you could have some, overlap, between the laws and auras and such, but I think that there could be at least enough differences in design space to let them have their own identity and exist in the same space, especially if we're going to be going if this game is going to be lasting for years. Chances are Diablo 3 is going to be around for 10 years before we have Diablo 4. It's not that far away, unless they decide to want to launch Diablo 4 next year. That's still like 9 years in between titles. But obviously there's 11 years in between, or there are 12 years in between D2 and Diablo 3, 11 in between Lord of Destruction and Diablo 3. But we've got, if Diablo 4 will last as long as D3 or D2 did, and if they're going to continue to want to update and support this game, that's a lot of potential content that they could go and do. If the game is successful and the development team manages to continue to stay committed and large enough to support it on a constant basis, kind of like what GGG is doing with Path of Exile. But it is so really interesting. Again, go through, check it out. It's Lutsock, over on Diablo, our Diablo on Reddit. So go check it out. A lot of really cool things to check out there. And then one of the other things that has surfaced within the community is some concept art. And so we've got a couple of concept pieces, from the original concept that they had done for Diablo 3 at Blizzard North. So these are some of Blizzard North's. This is from the artist Tim Tao, that he's going through and sharing some of the things that he did at Blizzard North for Diablo 3. You have some 3D models of some siege weaponry, and then as well as some actual 3D environments that they had and that they were working on, both kind of like the battlegrounds, a shot of kind of their concept of heaven, because it looks as if going through and taking a look, and then we have some actual concept art of what would end up becoming Act 3 in the Diablo 3 that we got. But it does seem as if that theme of a siege and kind of having that kind of return to the Act 5 in Diablo 2, where you've got this big sieging snowfield and such, was something that they had wanted to revisit in the original ideas that they had for Diablo 3 over at Blizzard North. That's something that was carried through into the Diablo 3 that we got. But even those 3D models that we could see, obviously that they were done many years prior, to kind of, and it's just like concept. They weren't actual production models, but everything was a lot more desaturated. Things were a lot more realistic. That was something that we had with Diablo 3, is that they wanted to make a art style that wouldn't age, and so that's why they wanted to go with more. Everything kind of looked like an oil painting on canvas and such. And I unabashedly really enjoyed the art style that they went with Diablo 3. You can have some color and still maintain a darker atmosphere. I think a lot of times people will tend to forget, places like the Halls of Agony, or the towers in Act 3 and such. And I don't think that anybody has any questions about that. They really embrace that element in Reaper of Souls, but there was definitely a much different direction that they had that we can see in what we talked about in a couple episodes ago with some of the other designs that they had, at Blizzard North. A lot of desaturated colors, kind of focusing in more on that grim, dark aspect. As opposed to looking, for more of an artistic rendition that they went with Diablo 3. And then, of course, in Diablo 4, we're going back more towards, skewing a little bit more towards that kind of original intention, that they're going with a darker elements, less saturation. So we're still outside. Things are still vibrant, though I don't really think that that's the right word. But what we've seen of Diablo 4 so far, we've seen Skosglen, kind of like that, the Scottish moors and such, as well as like the deserts and the dry steppes, and so these are like bright places, especially the desert, but that kind of that desaturation of the hues and such makes its presence known and adds a little bit more of a darker tone in theme when you're just looking at the art for the game. And also, in addition to that, there were some other things that we went through and saw. They found some concept art, or not so much some concept art, but some production art. Let me find that screen right there. They found some, artist was able to go through, and this one is from Samuel Alicia, that he was able to go and post kind of like the textures and the models that he had done, for the Diablo 4 opening cinematic, where he was kind of like the character animator for who we've discussed at length now, the cultist, the pale cultist, Magnus, or the summoner. Not sure if there's really a take that the community has come to with describing him. But, going in, he refers to him as the mysterious character. But just some of the, the art that he had done, for that announcement cinematic and such, with the textures and things. Not only that, but Samuel had also done work for the Diablo Immortal announcement trailer. And so he went through and showed off some pieces that he had done for the wizard, for Diablo Immortal, and some of the character models that he had done there, for the cinematic itself. So it's cool, we get to see a little bit more behind the scenes and some of the work and such, and the artists, going and showing off the things that they have done. And I guess to kind of go and close out the episode, the one last little bit of kind of news that we've had, and this is in regards to Diablo Immortal, is that apparently back on August 12th, they had started the internal testing for Diablo Immortal that they had announced on the last quarter earnings call at Activision Blizzard. And so that they began their company-wide internal testing on the 12th, and it apparently has ended today. So that would have been a 2-week internal testing that they had done company-wide, with which to try and go and collect a whole bunch of feedback for Diablo Immortal. Now, we don't really have any details, and none of these dates have been official. This is all coming from a user on the Diablo Immortal Discord, from, it's the our Diablo Immortal, so the official Discord server for the Diablo Immortal subreddit. And the user Snow Tyrant is, someone that he's from China, and he is like an official like super moderator over like on the NetEase forums and such, and apparently has some insider contacts and such. He has been accurate in some previous postings or predictions that he's made in the past, and so I'm willing to take this one with a little bit more confidence than just some random user going through and posting stuff on the internet. But it is interesting, that they would go through and have like a kind of like a quick play session, and it makes me wonder: was the entire game playable? Did they just open the floodgates? Was it they like kind of like what they had talked about in the last Diablo 4 blog, where it was just a single act, a single zone that all the developers were able to go through and have access to in order to play through. So how much of the game were they able to go through and play in test? And will there be a second phase of internal testing, a third phase of internal testing? Will there be a public regional test? Will there be a closed alpha? Don't know. And this is all new territory, not just for us as fans, but also for Blizzard, developing their first mobile title, with all of the headaches that are involved with trying to open up testing and the mobile schemes and things of that nature. We'll just have to I say it a lot, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one. But I do thank you for going through and listening to me here on this episode. So I will be back in a couple weeks' time, unless, of course, we end up having some sort of big news or reveals from Gamescom. I expect that the next episode is going to be recorded over on September 9th, and we'll have to just go through and see in the interim. But by all means, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback for the show, drop me a line at westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. And make sure that you follow the show over at the WM Workshop, or you can follow me at 9ballgamer on Twitter. And I record here on Twitch every other Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific at twitch.tv/BlizzPro. Or you can also find the show over on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, your podcasting platform of choice. And with that, again, thanks for hanging out here with me tonight, and I will catch you all next time.